this is complicated. This is more complicated than I think people realize, because there's a power struggle going on at North Carolina that has been going on for a while, and it is manifesting itself in this coaching search. Basically, you've got a board of trustees chair who does not like the athletic director. Like, he tried to kneecap Bubba Cunningham. John Pryor is the name of the board of trustees chair. He tried to kneecap Bubba Cunningham in May because he wanted to see more detailed financials from the athletic department. And so remember that it was right as ACC spring meetings started, he gave an interview with Inside Carolina that essentially just ripped Bubba Cunningham. And now you're seeing this situation where he did not agree with the handling of the firing of Mac Brown. And now this is sort of spilling out into, this is my preferred candidate. This is my preferred candidate. And it's really interesting, because if you want to kneecap your AD, one way to do it is to make everybody think you're going to get Bill Belichick, and then maybe you don't.
Yeah, it's college athletics gets dirty, man. Like, we've seen some weird stuff happen at Auburn in the past. Like, we're seeing this now. Like, it's just it's a dirty game. And the funniest thing about it is that everybody who usually is involved in these types of things wants the same result, you know. But I also think that dysfunction like this leads to it becoming harder to be good or to be successful. So we'll see how this all pans out. But, you know, on the surface, the Bill Belichick rumors, smoke, whatever you want to call it, are interesting at the very least.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because this is the guy that I would assume most people consider the greatest football coach of all time. Like, we say Nick Saban's the greatest college coach of all time, and I don't think there's any debate about that. But Bill Belichick won 6 Super Bowls as a head coach, 2 as a defensive coordinator with the Giants. Nobody's been able to do anything like that, because it's a league designed for equity. Nobody's supposed to win that much, and he figured out how. Now, you can argue that it was Tom Brady. I think it was probably a combination of both. But the idea that this person could jump into college football is very intriguing. But he's also 72 years old.
I just Googled greatest football coach of all time. AI helped me out with this.
Okay.
Bill Belichick is number 2 on the list. If you do the AI
Vince Lombardi?
Don Shula came up.
Oh, John Shula. Well,
came up.
Yeah.
Bobby
Shula
Bowden.
has the NFL wins record that Bill Belichick is chasing, and that's a piece of this discussion.
Yeah, the AI thing is going to take over the world. We can have a podcast about that in March. But coaches from the Google came up. Bill Belichick was number 1. Nick Saban was 2. You had Vince Lombardi, John Madden, Tom Landry, Don Shula, Bill Parcells, Andy Reid, and Bill Walsh. Those were when you type it in, that's what comes up.
I think the AI, I would like to hear the AI's case for Shula. He does have the most all-time wins, but nowhere near the number of Super Bowls.
With 347 wins, Shula holds the NFL record for most wins. He also won won 2 Super Bowls and was named Coach of the Year 4 times. That's what AI said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bill Belichick won 6. So,
I mean, argue with the robots, pal.
I know. Bill Belichick had to do it when there was free agency, and Bill Belichick had to do it when the draft was 7 rounds and not 12. And this is.
You want context and reason from the robots? Is that what you want?
No, I actually don't want. I really don't want the robots to learn context and reason, because that's when they put us out of a job.
Then we're done. Not out of a job, out of the world. Like,
that's right.
You know, I'm not a big sci-fi guy, but those movies tend to also all end the same way. And the thing I don't understand about it, real quick, is that we are trying our best to make all those horror sci-fi movies come true.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want them to have reason. We don't want them to be smart. Like, we're doing it. Like, I feel like humans are doing it.
Yes.
Is it kind of scary?
It's like nobody watched Terminator or Terminator 2. Maybe it's your fault because you don't like those movies. Like, it's people like you who haven't watched Terminator 2 who don't know how this ends.
I guess it's true. It is kind of my fault because if I have seen Terminators, by the way. There's a line.
Okay. All right.
I've seen those movies and they're badass.
Okay.
Yeah, but if more people watch the Terminator, then maybe they would stop trying to get AI to be smarter than us.
Well, it's not smarter yet, because if it was, it would say Bill Belichick is the greatest football coach of all time. The question is whether Bill Belichick is going to come coach in college. Now, he went on Pat McAfee's show yesterday, and he sounded like a man who's very interested in this job, but either hasn't been offered it or hasn't decided he would accept it, because there was a lot of if I did this, if I did this, if I did this. But he sounded like he had a plan if he did this.
It didn't sound like a gimmick to me. Like he did research and understand. And like, listen, you don't become a coach that's in the conversation for greatest coach of all time without having an understanding of how it works at other levels too, right? Because you learn from other levels. The NFL has learned a lot from college and vice versa. Like you're in the world, you're around coaches all the time. You know how the world works. The question is whether or not it makes sense. Now, we had a discussion about this yesterday in Nashville when we were together. But my thought that scares me, before we get into all the positives of what this could bring, is that we have seen coaching hires of similar ilk in the past that have not worked out well. Now, that said, those similar coaching hires in the past weren't the greatest coach of all time or a coach that created an NFL dynasty, which is, I think, inarguably harder than doing it in college because of the talent discrepancy and the lack thereof. But retread hires is the word I'm going to use. Coaching names that have big splashes that everybody gets excited about, but then when you actually get 2 or 3 years into the tenure, there's not much substance behind. Herm Edwards comes to mind. Charlie Weiss comes to mind. Les Miles comes to mind. It's not always NFL to college. It's just big names that have accomplished stuff in their careers that are on the downturn of both career and age. You
mentioned the Kevin Sumlin Arizona tenure when we were talking about that
it's
too.
Like Kevin Sumlin got hired at Arizona because Arizona's administration wanted to trick people in Tucson into thinking they did something because he has a recognizable name. And like Bill Belichick is the absolute like supercharged version of those things because he's Bill Belichick, right? Like, so the thing that scares me is if you're 72 years old and you're firing a coach that you're that's basically the same age, in part because A, he hadn't gotten it done, but B, is getting up there in age. It just seems like a bizarre move. But then on the other hand, when you start breaking down the positives of it, like this could be different too. So like I think that you and I both were amused by the report last week because we didn't think this actually could come true. But now that it seems like there's more traction to this and that, like by the end of Tuesday, it's like within the realm of possibility that he could be named their coach. You actually do have to start to break it down and think, well, okay, maybe this isn't just a retread hire. Maybe there's something to it that he could bring to the table that those guys in the past couldn't.
Well, one of the things that he's pointed out is watching his son, Steve, work as the Washington defensive coordinator under Jed Fish. He's seen his system implemented in college now. Because I think one concern is, could Bill Belichick's defense be translated to college students who have to go to class, who are not full-time employees, who are not in the building all day, every day, although we kind of know that that's not entirely true. They are basically employees. They are in the building all day, every day. And if you watch the Huskies this year, it looked like they picked up the defense. It was not a great year for them, but we didn't expect it to be a great year for them because it was a complete rebuild after the whole roster was gone. So he's seen that now. So there's a little proof of concept there. But I also wonder, is this Bill Belichick just reminding the folks in the NFL who did not hire him last year, did not hire him in last cycle? I'm here. I'm Bill Belichick, for God's sake. What are you guys doing? Give me a job. And, we are less than 12 hours removed from an absolute disaster piece by the Dallas Cowboys, where basically, and look, it's probably not Mike McCarthy's fault that a guy who just got called up off the practice squad tried to touch a blocked punt and it went through his hands and the Bengals recovered. But It doesn't help Mike McCarthy. And
You know what it does help?
Bill Belichick.
My fantasy team, who got into the playoffs because of the Jamar Chase touchdown reception at the end of the game. So thank you very much for that. Hey, but Andy, so here's the question I have, and I don't follow the NFL like I watch it as a fan, but I don't follow the reporting.
We don't cover
closely.
it. Yeah,
we don't cover it. A large part of what drove Bill Belichick, I think, during his time in the NFL, and I was kind of looking this up last night because he even was like a quasi GM for the Browns 20 years ago or 30 years ago, whatever it was, is the personnel piece to it. And I think that the thing that you would question with Bill Belichick as an NFL franchise, I don't know if this is right or wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think Bill Belichick doesn't just want a head coaching job. He also wants to be in charge of personnel too, right?
I think you're exactly right.
And if that's what's holding people up, I can understand that, especially considering the fact that things didn't end on a great note in New England. So, like the college piece, if like making and building and molding your team is what he loves, which might be the thing that drives him, being a college coach allows him to do that. He can pick his pieces. He can figure out how to allocate NIL and revenue share money when the time comes. He can try to mold the roster into what he thinks it should look like in order to win that way. And I don't know if that opportunity is going to be available in the NFL to him. So that's a secondary way of looking at this, because if assembling the rosters is much fills his love tank as much as actually coaching the players on the team, then college might just be his best option at this point.
This show is sponsored by Panini America, the makers of the most collectible sports cards on the planet. Visit PaniniAmerica.net to start collecting your favorite college and NFL stars. The Luminance series has NIL autographs from guys like, Arch Manning, Quinn Ewers, people in the college football playoff. There's also Jalen Milroe. There's also DJ Lagway. Ari, we ripped open a box in Nashville yesterday, and this was the one that you won from me in the Colorado-Kansas bet. You got a Cooper DeJean autograph.
Yeah, Guy Sells also got a numbered Marvin Harrison Jr. rookie card. I got a Roman Wilson auto. It was a nice little rip, and it felt better because it came from you. I'm also sending a few of these cards out to PSA today that are pretty big. I got this here. This is a Patrick Mahomes cracked ice. We have a Jordan Addison red, white, and blue mojo to 13 out of Contenders Optic, and we have a gold Dalton Kincaid. So we got some we got some hooks in the hobby. Really enjoy doing it, and happy that Panini's here because it's my favorite thing in the world.
Justin Herbert, good as gold, autograph uniform swatch. There's a little Chargers blue on a uniform swatch too. That's true. And the thing is, like, if you have a traditional NFL power structure where you have a GM who makes the football personnel decisions and then the coach makes the football X's and O's decisions, the front office people don't want you to hire Bill Belichick because they know ultimately if he's successful, he's going to fire them.
Which is why I don't understand the Dallas Cowboys stuff. Like,
here's why. Here's why the Cowboys are different. Because Jerry and Stephen Jones run personnel for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
They ain't firing themselves.
Right. So that's why it doesn't make any sense.
But they could bring in Bill Belichick to coach the team, and Bill could make suggestions about personnel all he wants, but they're the owners. And remember, that's what Bill Parcells did with them. And they managed it with Parcells till they didn't. But that would probably be the only situation where the personnel decision makers would not be scared of Bill Belichick.
Yeah, no, there's no question. And it would be dysfunctional, I think. So I don't
highly
know.
And highly entertaining too. But to your point.
But I don't know that would be attractive to Bill Belichick at all anyway. Like, I think he wants to go to a place knowing that he's king shit, right? Like, he doesn't want to go in there and listen to and also too, again, rudimentary understanding of the NFL because I don't cover it the way I do with college football. But like, haven't the Cowboys been pretty terrible at their personnel decisions? Isn't that part of the reason why they've been bad for the most part?
But Jerry ain't firing himself, and that's the difference.
As I drink my Diet Dr. Pepper I got out of a Dallas gas station that says Cowboys on it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Jerry runs your town, but yeah, Jerry's not firing himself, even if he made not the best decision in the whole wide world, re-signing Dak, re-signing CD Lamb. Really, you could have just re-signed Micah Parsons, redone the offense, and you probably wouldn't be in cap hell.
And isn't there like a concern that they're going to lose Parsons, who would be the last of those three that I would want to lose?
I don't think they're going to lose him, but
okay.
I think so. But yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's just a strange situation, and I think you're right about the college piece of it, where he could come in, he would be the king, he'd be able to do what he wants. Like he's got a podcast now. Did you know that we have to compete with Bill Belichick here in the podcast space?
I mean, the guy's an electric personality, so sometimes you just have to lay your sword down and accept taking an L. You know,
so I listened to some episodes of that podcast. Yeah, and it was very interesting to me because he does it with Mike Lombardi, who's a former NFL GM. He was the GM of the Browns, and he did a lot of personnel work with Bill Belichick over the years. And with Matt Patricia, former head coach of the Lions, but who always was on the Bill Belichick staffs before that. And then famously was a defensive coordinator who became the offensive coordinator in a pretty much disastrous season. Matt Patricia is a really good, natural sounding podcast host.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really good.
How is the content?
It's good because these guys know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And so when they're breaking down NFL teams, they understand, very clearly. And I think they translate it very well. What I think he would do at North Carolina is it'd probably be a getting the band back together situation. Mike Lombardi's your GM. Matt Patricia's maybe your DC. Is Joe Judge working right now? Could he be your special teams coordinator? He's looked at college jobs throughout the years. He almost became Mississippi State's head coach at one point. So, that's my question is, you could probably do whatever you want in college because you're Bill Belichick.
Okay.
At this point, I don't know if you can do that in the NFL, even though you're Bill Belichick.
Yeah. So let's talk about it from the college aspect then, because this is a college football podcast. Is making a program that's just the NFLcation of an ACC school a sellable and good plan to you?
Do you think that Jed Fish's plan at Washington is a good plan? Because this is simply a Belichickized version of that, which, by the way, Jed Fish probably got advice from Bill Belichick before he became a head coach at Arizona the first time.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I do think that it's a good plan, what Jed did at Washington, to hire a bunch of people, including Bill Belichick's son, in order to, have that NFL college program, right? They tell that to people. They want you to know that when you go to Washington, you will be in a NFL-like system designed solely to help develop players to the next level. So, that's it. But it's also like NFL by proxy. And I know that Jed spent time in the NFL, but getting the actual person that like it's different between saying, hey, I used to work with Bill Belichick and this is his son. And, we know how it works in the NFL, and then actually just being Bill Belichick. Right. Going to that. But I think the question that I really have here, Andy, more than anything is that do you think North Carolina, a team that played in the ACC championship game 2 years ago, is at a place where it needs to, bend over in a way, or contort its body in a way to just be so different that it tries something? It takes a home run swing. I said this to you yesterday, and I think it kind of struck a nerve, but I want to say it on the show because it's good podcasting, but it felt or feels kind of gimmicky to me. Do you think that's an unfair categorization of this? And do you think that North Carolina needs to do something like this in order to be competitive?
I don't think they have to do something like this. But I also think the way this search has unfolded, that they've eliminated a lot of candidates who probably would have considered this job or would have taken this job. John Sumrall has said he's going back to Tulane. And if this hadn't been such a ham-fisted search, I would imagine he'd have listened to them. Matt Campbell, I don't think even wanted to listen to them. Had it not been such a, messed up search, I would imagine he would have at least listened. He'd be great for the job. I don't know if he would take it. He seems like he's got a pretty good situation at Iowa State now, but that's a hard job. I think North Carolina is probably an easier job than Iowa State. But he's also smart enough to know I'm aligned with my AD. Things are working. There's not somebody trying to get my AD fired. I think things could go pretty well here, rather than inviting the turmoil that seems to be happening there.
Well, when you said that North Carolina was an easier job than Iowa State, like I had a little moment of doubt there. I mean, I stepped back and you're right. You're probably right. But we have
it's not by a huge margin.
But we have to acknowledge the challenges that North Carolina is facing. And I'm going to tell you what those challenges are, just based on knowledge of the situation, but also being able to read the tea leaves here. So I went to Chapel Hill in 2020, right before COVID broke out. I actually got a notification on my phone as I was leaving Mac Brown's office saying first reported case of COVID in America, just so you know. But on that trip, Mac Brown sold his vision for North Carolina, how they were going to recruit, how the state of North Carolina itself is a very underutilized state, or under-recruited state in comparison to the amount of talent they had, very underrated, and that they were going to attack those players and do a very good job in Virginia and the surrounding states on top of that. And for the first 2 years of his tenure there, North Carolina did a very good job. If you go back and look at guys like Tony Grimes, I know it didn't pan out for him in college. Keyshawn Silver, who I believe is in the portal right now. These are 5-star players that North Carolina signed that they might not have been able to sign in other eras.
Drake May, you may have heard of. Now, he was a legacy.
It's a legacy, so I think it's a little bit different.
But Sam Howell is a guy that Mac flipped on day one of having the job.
Yeah. And if you go look up North Carolina's classes, they have gotten guys that you would not think they would be able to get under Mac Brown at the very beginning of his tenure. Now, the thing of that is interesting is if you've actually looked between the lines in the 24 and 25 classes, North Carolina is not competing on the most part on the grand scale with the teams that it was competing with, before. We are in the 2022 class, they signed 5-star defensive lineman Travis Shaw, 5-star offensive tackle Zach Rice, top end wide receiver Andre Green Jr. out of Virginia. And, they're doing a very good job in North Carolina, in Virginia specifically. And they're not competing against those teams anymore, the big time teams, because North Carolina, from what I understand, is not in a position from an NIL standpoint to compete financially with the types of players that they were getting before. So you've seen a downswing in the in-state talent in North Carolina, but then also their ability to go outside of state and get guys that Mac Brown was able to get 3 years ago, which makes it, to me, a very, very challenging job. Beautiful campus, gorgeous uniforms, Power 4 conference, difficult job. So the question with Bill Belichick is that are you put in a position, if you are an administrator at North Carolina, to understand the financial limitations of your program? And if it's funny enough, you'll go see, North Carolina basketball forums complaining about NIL,
right.
Which, it's not just a football thing. If North Carolina basketball is struggling with that, then what are we doing? Right. So do they have to go get a guy like Bill Belichick, pay him more in order to get him there to do something different so they can get the NIL discount of playing for him?
And in that way, it would make a hire like this actually closer to Colorado's Dion Sanders hire.
Exactly. Is that the position they have to be in?
But this is not, I'm not saying that the Dion's, because Dion's hire has turned out to not be a stunt. Dion has been a good coach at Colorado. We were wrong about that going into this season. He proved us wrong. And the thing about it is Dion makes it so that Colorado can be in on players that it wouldn't normally be in on, that they probably don't have the resources to compete for. But being in Dion's orbit helps you from an NIL standpoint, helps you from a platform standpoint. It matters.
And he's probably going to have a Heisman winner here shortly. But here's the
Yes.
thing about Colorado that North Carolina does not have, and I don't think Bill Belichick has. And correct me if you disagree. If if Colorado can't pay what you want from an NIL standpoint up front, in terms of like guaranteed, come here, here's what you get. Dion Sanders could probably look a young man in the eyes and say, "We'll make it up to you on the back end. Like we'll get you in an Aflac commercial, or we'll do something.
You'll be in a KFC commercial. Like we'll figure it out." And because he can do that. I don't know that Bill Belichick can do that. What Bill Belichick can offer is a lot of the same thing that Kirby Smart will say, that Nick Saban always said, is I can develop you to be a first-round draft pick, which Nick Saban got the Nick Saban discount early in the NIL era because he made first-rounders better than anybody else. I think Kirby Smart still gets that. I think Ohio State, I don't know, they probably don't get it as much anymore, but I think at certain positions, like if you're a receiver going to Ohio State, you probably are willing to take that over a less lucrative offer because of the first rounders they make.
Yeah. And the good news about that, though, is that at the right place, if you usually places that have a ton of first rounders also are the places that are paying the most on the front end, because first rounders are developed, but they're also recruited. So, like, if you go look at Ohio State's first round draft picks, like it's just 5-star player after 5-star player too. So like it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, but still, like when you look at North Carolina, if they know that they are unable to compete with Georgia, Clemson, other teams that are recruiting that region of the country, do you go get Bill Belichick, who can get people in a different way? And do you feel like you have to?
I don't think you feel like you have to, but I think now that you've presented him as an option, you probably need to close it. Because unfortunately, even if you make a good hire of a current college coach, if this doesn't work, your fan base is going to be like, you told us we were getting Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
This is a tough situation to be in. Like, you need him to come now, because whoever you hire will seem like a letdown, even if it's a good hire. Producer River, Vol for Life goes, "Where's Gruden?" Actually, Gruden would take this job. It's so funny that Gruden, who was the guy that every time the Tennessee job opened, that fan base was like, "We got to get John Gruden." Now Gruden actually wants a college job, and the fan bases aren't clamoring for him.
Well, it's funny that you bring up Tennessee, because I feel like Tennessee is like the direct reason why North Carolina is a harder job than it was 2 years ago.
Right.
Like, it's like,
and when Philip Fulmer was there, they recruited North Carolina really well too. And the thing is, like, Georgia's recruited North Carolina. Like, Todd Gurley's from North Carolina. It's always been a challenge for them to keep their best players in state. So
and also Tennessee is most aggressive, or one of the more aggressive teams in the compensation packages. So if they're going to go after the guys in this, like, Mac Brown said North Carolina is a majorly ignored state, despite the fact that there are really good players there. But Tennessee,
I don't think it's ignored anymore.
It's not that it is anymore, but the team that emphasizes it, Tennessee, wins battles easier now. Like it. Yeah. So, well, like, what you think there's a correlation between Tennessee's financial input or financial output and North Carolina's demise from a recruiting standpoint, or is that just like you want to make a 30 for 30 on that? It's not that difficult to put together.
Well, and you also have another orange team nearby that.
Yeah, but that orange team is also limited, from what I understand. So
yeah, but Clemson's going to be less limited pretty soon here. So with the rev share, but as producer River points out, James Pierce is from Charlotte. That's Tennessee's best edge rusher, one of the best edge rushers in the country.